In this video, entitled mother thought I was faking my disability for attention and almost made my injury worse. EP accuses blind girl of being able to see, gets handed an eyeful. And comply with the 30-year-old dress code? You got it, boss. Entitled mother thought I was faking my disability for attention and almost made my injury worse. I was playing in the local park with my three older brothers, Jake, 11, John, 12, and James, 14, and our neighbors, Cal, 10, and Craig, 13. We were all laughing, having fun when John had the idea to play a game on the roundabout. The game was pretty dumb and dangerous, but really fun back then. It involved 5 of us holding onto the outside poles as one of us pushed the roundabout as fast as possible. We all had to hold on for dear life, or we would get flung off. Last one holding on would win. We all ran up to the roundabout and got into position. My brothers thought it was a bad idea for me to play because I have a joint disability, but because there hadn't been an incident for a while, they let me play. I held on, wrapping my legs and arms around the pole along with Cal, John, Craig, and Jake. James began pushing the roundabout really fast, and we were all screaming and shouting in excitement. For me, the screams of joy turned to screams of severe pain as my leg had dislocated around the pole. As the roundabout spun, it was slowly pulling my legs apart, and it was agony. James realized what was happening and immediately grinded the ride to a halt. Everyone was panicking as they couldn't move me, and any attempt they made it more excruciating, and I screamed louder. In a panic, James, John, and Craig told Cal and Jake to stay with me so they could run and get my dad. They ran off, and a crowd gathered of parents and their kids to see what was going on. The parents did try to touch me, but Jake and Cal explained that I have a disability and the others are getting my dad who knows what to do, adding that moving me might make it worse. A lot of parents looked very concerned, with some kids looking really confused as I looked like I was just sitting there crying. Enter the entitled mother, EM, and her shit of a daughter, EK, maybe about 12. They approached the group and asked what was going on, and the other parents explained the situation. EM immediately said how ridiculous everyone was being and saying that I'm clearly just trying to get attention by the looks of things. Cal was with me, patting my back, telling me I was going to be okay, while Jake was telling the other kids not to be mean as they supposedly were saying the same as EM. EK then told EM how she wanted to go on the roundabout. EM telling her to hold on a minute and approached me and Cal. She began telling me to get off the roundabout and Cal said I couldn't. He tried to explain that our siblings had gone to get my dad, but EM ignored him. She told me to get off again before grabbing me and trying to yank me off. I screamed in pain again, begging her to stop, but she just responded, "Stop being overdramatic and get off." I felt an intense pain like never before in my legs and was crying uncontrollably trying to hold on to the pole. EM kept telling me to stop being a baby and stop faking it and let her little baby on. EM pulled me with a lot of force and fell onto my back with my legs still around the pole. Cal started screaming for Jake, and Jake ran over and tried to tackle her, telling her leave her alone. EK then jumped in, telling Jake that I was an attention seeker and tried hitting Jake, saying to leave her mom alone. At this point, EM was trying to drag me and the other parents saw my leg. Now it was visibly obvious that my leg was dislocated. The other parents jumped in and dragged EM away from me as she was screaming, "She's faking! She isn't disabled, she's faking!" As the other parents along with Cal tried to put me back in my original position, EK ran after her mom crying because Jake did end up hitting her, according to Jake. The other parents stayed with me, Cal, and Jake until my dad arrived while telling their kids to play on other equipment. EM was still screaming and shouting about how we were attention seekers while EK cried for her mom. James, John, Craig, and my dad arrived and ran over to me with my dad gently unhooking my leg from the pole and carefully, along with the other parents, carrying me to a nearby bench. My dad told me to do the brave trick and I started biting onto my sleeve as my dad popped my leg back into place. He thanked the other parents for their help and they told my dad what happened to EM. He was fuming and asked them where she was, but when he looked around he saw EM and EK running out the park. EM must have seen my dad's face because he looked like he was out for blood. After my leg was popped in, I stopped crying and thanked everyone after calming down a bit. They all wished me well and went back to their kids. My dad carried me out of the park and took me to my mom at her work. She was a nurse, and Jake told our parents everything. They were horrified, and my mom said that if she kept doing what she was doing, she could have caused me serious injury. I never ran into EM or EK again, but my dad told me that if I ever saw her again, to call him immediately. EP accuses blind girl of being able to see, gets handed an eyeful. I was reminded of this incident yesterday during a phone call with a friend from my college days. For a little background, my friend, I'll call her Jill, and I were both about 19 or 20 years old at the time of the incident in 1983. Do the math, and yes, I'm that old. Because Jill was blind, ocular melanoma, important later, she had an advocate. There's another name for this, but for the life of me, I can't think of what it is, but you get the idea. That went everywhere with her on the university campus. They made sure she made it safely to and from each of her classes and assisted her with test taking, etc. We met when Jill walked by my table in the student union hall, bumped my coffee, and spilled it all over both of us. We've been friends ever since. Because Jill lived off campus with her parents, and I lived in an off-campus apartment a few blocks away, I drove every day to school. We coordinated our class schedule so that I could drop her off to her advocate in the morning, and in the afternoon, the advocate would bring her to me and I would take her home. This one particular semester, Jill's last class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday ended an hour before mine. Normally, her advocate would hang out with her in the student union hall to wait for me. Since it was Friday, Jill insisted that the advocate bring her to the building where I had class and she would just wait for me there, closer to where I parked the car, and the advocate could go home a little early. This is something Jill did occasionally just to be nice. I always took the same route out of the building and knew to be on the lookout for her. This day, Jill was in her usual spot in the lobby. She was sitting on the floor. There were no seats, with her back against the wall. Her cane folded beside her, tinted glasses on, and appearing to stare straight ahead. To Jill's left were the lobby doors, about 30 feet away. Jill thinks she'd been sitting there for maybe 50 to 55 minutes when she heard what sounded like squeaky wheels rolling over the floor. She didn't bother to call out and just thought it was maybe the janitorial staff with those mop buckets on wheels getting an early start on mopping. Then she heard someone push the panic bar on one of the lobby's double doors and the wheels banging over the metal threshold. A moment later, a woman's voice filled the empty lobby. The conversation that ensued is to the best of Jill's and my memory. EP, what the hell is wrong with you young people? Never in my life have I seen so many inconsiderate brats in my life. Jill, I'm sorry? EP, and you should be, young lady. You could see that I needed help with this hand truck, an upright metal thing with two wheels and a small base to put heavy stuff on to move it from one place to another, but you just sat there and did absolutely nothing. Didn't anyone teach you manners? Jill, I didn't see you. EP, how could you not see me? I'm the only other person here. Jill, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I'm blind. EP, you really expect me to believe that? Blind people can't go to college. You're just too lazy to get off the floor. Jill pulled her cane around, unfolded it, and got to her feet. Yes, ma'am, I'm blind, and I can go to college. Me, rounding the corner. What's going on? Classes are letting out and students are beginning to leave or change classes. EP, this girl expects me to believe she's blind. Me, she is. EP, that's a load of crap. Prove it. The woman walks up to Jill and takes the tinted glasses from her face. EP, see? She directs this to the students who were hanging around to watch the drama as if she expected them to agree with her or take her side. She can see. There's nothing wrong with her eyes. She's not really blind. As I stated earlier, Jill had ocular melanoma. As a result, her eyes were surgically removed and she was fitted with prosthesis that looked real at a quick glance but didn't move like normal eyes and were a bit flat in their color. It was kind of like looking into the eyes of a very old doll. However, the best part of Jill's eyes, they were removable. Jill reached up, popped out one eyeball, and held it out to the woman. Here, look through this and tell me if you can see anything. EP, backing away, screeching loudly. Oh my God! Oh my God! The woman backed away from us so fast, she tripped over either her own feet or those of gathering students, landed on her butt, and continued to scoot away. When she got to the door, she pulled herself up, grabbed her hand truck, and left. Jill maneuvered the eye back into the socket. The small crowd of students started clapping and laughing, and a few gave Jill a pat on the back. Jill, sighing dramatically. So much for that lady seeing things through my eyes, huh? Geez, I love Jill's humor. Comply with the 30-year-old dress code? You got it, boss. The shelter I've been working at for a couple of years now is over 30 years old and is quite notorious for keeping things that way. The daily notes are physically kept in binders, 80s-style punitive measures are imposed on clients in conflict, and the electrical panels are labeled with cards that went through a typewriter. You get the idea. The floor supervisor, over 20 years in that position, emphasized that even though jeans were allowed, we needed to strictly adhere to the dress code. That meant that button-up or collared shirts, no logos, only long pants/dresses, no hats unless you're outside, no visible tattoos, etc. In other words, dress nothing like the vast majority of people we serve. We're meant to dress the way that they should aspire to dress, said the supervisor. I was told other staff, including staff above my pay grade, have long hated the dress code and unsuccessfully tried to change it for years. None of them were bold little shits like me, though. Given my previous experience with underserved populations, I also knew this was a terrible idea. Generally speaking, what people in these communities lack in financial resources, they make up for in their abilities to read people and navigate emotions. If they think you're an authority figure or acting inauthentic, many will outright write you off, and for the most part, they have a great social/emotional radar. The dress code said men's shirts must have visible buttons or a collar. I sewed 2 buttons near my hip on a plain t-shirt and wore it in. They said nothing the first time, but had a meeting where they weren't pointing out anyone in particular and updated that specific part of the policy to prevent me from doing it again. Next, I wore capris. After all, nothing about pant length was mentioned either. That time the code was updated and we were informed via email. Still, no one-on-one conversation about it. A few months and minor malicious compliances later, our workplace gave us logo t-shirts with the institution's name and website on them. Hooray, we thought. We'll at least be able to wear t-shirts now. Nope. After a week of several coworkers wearing the shirts they gave us, we got an org-wide email that the shirts did not comply with the dress code and should not be worn during work hours. Knowing me as the office rabble-rouser, several pissed-off coworkers came to me independently to ask how they could rebel. Enter this story's biggest malicious compliance. As a minimalist, I had no desire to hold on to a shirt that I would not wear. We had no input on the design/color of the shirts, and I simply didn't need it taking up space in my closet. The most reasonable alternative would be to turn the shirt back in and explain that, so I did. Coworker number 1 was moving soon and didn't need an extra thing to pack, so she also turned hers in. Number 2's partner hated dark green, the shirt's color, so he turned his in. This happened all the way to 25 total employees, with some borrowing others' excuses. After 5 days, the supervisor had a box with 24 shirts sitting in his tiny office. He actually has to keep them on his desk, and I can hear him bumping his hand against them when he uses the mouse. 3 months later, they're still there. He's not dumb. He knows those shirts are an FU that lives in his office. He can't donate them to the shelter due to some other ridiculous handbook rule about organizational spending, and he bikes 6 miles to work, so driving them home isn't a reasonable option. He's tried putting them in a general office storage, but his boss has said that the shirts are the supervisor's problem since he ordered them. Currently, he's just stuck. We know it bothers him, but he knows he can't bring it up since it's his own rules that prevent us from wearing them. No dress code changes so far, but the top of the year meeting regarding our handbook has dress code on the table. 3 of the people who return shirts are part of that advisory board of 5. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll finally be rid of some of the dumb, short-sighted elements of our dress code come February.